Welcome back to Briggs on Books. We've had a long day of interviewing authors from all around the world, Sweden, England, even the United States. We had a few guests come on the show today, and it's been a fascinating day hearing authors, how they construct their books, how they get their ideas, and things like that. Our next guest has been here. Maybe this is a fourth time. Welcome, Dale McCool. Hi, Dale. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
Would you say you are a science fiction writer?
That's my primary is science fiction, and I do some paranormal mystery. But today, some of these books are actually nonfiction.
Nonfiction, okay. Like, hate to jump right into it, but is it the Modern Civil War Survival Guide?
That would be it.
Now, I tend to read more nonfiction than I do fiction. Tell me about this book because you got my attention.
Sure. With everything going on globally, not just in the U.S., and the political climates of a lot of countries, there's a lot of unrest and instability. And even in our country, there's a lot of people, movies coming out talking about civil wars and things. And so what I did was I started researching, what would the next civil war look like? And it's not what people think. There's not a big blue and gray army facing off on a battlefield. And so I kind of went into what would lead to a civil war. What happens if it happens? Because a lot of people forget if you have a big tornado or a hurricane or earthquake, you have no power for maybe weeks, no water, no food, no gasoline. Well, think about that times forever if an actual small-scale civil war broke out and people are blowing up your local utility stations and suddenly you're trapped in your home, and what are you going to do? And so that's kind of what this book is about.
I guess if you have no TV, and many don't even have a radio these days, but you cut off the internet and people's phone service, that in itself would lead to anarchy, I would imagine.
Sure. And then again, if you have no power, then you have no water, you can't eat, you can't cook, you can't heat or cool your home. The gas stations are shut down. Now you're just standing around with everybody else looking at each other.
Yeah. Some of us older guys might be able to function without those basic necessities because we've lived through that. But young people, you cut off their water first thing and the power, and it's all over.
And there's no fast food restaurant to drive through and get your food, right?
Where would you get your food?
That's it. That's exactly what's going on. And some of the people out there are called preppers. They're the ones that, survivalists, people who are getting ready for whatever comes up. And this book kind of goes a little bit into that near the end. And it's basically just kind of telling you, watch out politically, the climate of the world, the climate of your area. And if things do go bad, what should you do to protect you and your family?
Do you feel that we're kind of getting close to some kind of conflict?
There's a lot of people that talk about this on the internet and on TV. And if you listen to some of the pundits, they say we're right there, and a lot of things are depending on things going on with the November election and things going on in political climate in general with some of these court cases that are going on across the U.S. And I think there's a lot of unrest in the United States, and the people, the ones who are still thinking clearly right now, just need to be kind of prepared in case it does go the wrong way, and they need to be ready to protect their family.
Yeah. I know that the last few elections, all the way back to George W. Bush, they weren't really one way or another. They're all almost exactly tied. So the nation is so evenly divided politically now, and then you have these issues that are, the Middle East issues with the Gaza and stuff like that, that people who have never been that political are now standing up and really putting their foot down.
No, exactly. And in some cases, for a long time, a lot of people felt like, well, if a conflict happened, it would just be one and done. Yeah. But in researching his book, I found that there's a lot of things on both sides of the political aisle that have been done by different groups on each side to try to get their attention to their cause. And again, that's how this would start. This is not going to be, fighter bombers going down Broadway. Right. It's going to be the fact that there's going to be small-scale incursions on both sides, people starting to do things to draw attention, draw people to their cause, and it'll just escalate from that point. And that's probably historically, and I quote some recent civil wars in other countries and how they got to the point of open conflict, and that's kind of some of what this book talks about.
I know in the past few years we've seen people take over entire downtowns in Oregon and Washington and take over university campuses and buildings. And is this book a thought-provoking book, or is it an actual instruction guide, a survival guide?
I think you touched on all three, really. It's kind of thought-provoking. Initially, I'm talking about what is the Civil War? How does it get there? How do we get there? And then it kind of goes into, and if this is going to happen, here's the signs you should watch for, and not necessarily what you're hearing on the local TV station. And then the third case is, how are you and your family ready if it does happen? You know, you can't rely on your local government or any government to step in and take care of you. You're going to have to take care of yourself, or you'll become, you know, one of the statistics of this thing.
Yeah. Already you got me thinking, I need to do some preparation for this.
Right. It never hurts to have yourself ready. And again, there's a lot of other material on the internet that will tell you how to prep for the different kinds of scenarios. So
I know that canned food lasts a long time, but if I bought bags of wheat, I certainly would not know what to do with it.
Right. And again, these companies out there right now, they actually create things, and they're creating them in the case of something like this, or in the case of a major, natural disaster, and you're trapped without food and water, things that can help you get through.
We saw a little thing like when COVID hit, and there wasn't enough toilet paper and some things like that, and the shelves were literally hauntingly empty.
Yeah,
and it didn't take long.
Everything will be empty if something happens like this. You think about it. If somebody was to blow up your local Walmart, how often are you going to try to go to Walmart now? Or if randomly people are shooting at people on the highway going to gasoline. You know, there's all kinds of things that people can do in a bad way that could affect you as an individual, and you just got to really kind of think outside the box sometimes.
Yeah, I'm thinking if there was a power grid goes down, you couldn't even go to Walmart and there's no way to ring up
and that's all it would take is take out some of your major power grids, block some major intersections, blow up some bridges. Key small-scale things could lead to a large escalation.
Yeah, and the Civil War may not be about, I know this is what we're talking about, but it may not be against two sides, but one neighbor has food and the other neighbor doesn't.
And that's where it's going to come down to, and that's the later part about the surviving piece. Because when it comes down to that, you may have friends, but when you're starving and your family's starving and they've got plenty, who knows what might happen, right?
Yeah.
So.
But
that's but I know you probably showed the cover already, but it's not a very thick book, but it's got a lot of good details in it, and it's gotten some good reviews early on Amazon.
The next book we want to talk to you about today is The Bees of Deception, or Bees of Deception. It's got me fascinated just by the title.
Right, yeah, this is a sci-fi now.
Okay.
And a friend of mine, his nickname is Critter McCool. We're not directly related. But he's in South Carolina, in Charleston area, and he's actually been a bee extractor for 30, 40 years, whatever the number is. And he also does a lot of bee education, and we communicate. And he pitched an idea to me here a few months back. He said, have you ever thought about writing like a short novella sci-fi book where the hero is like a bee, something to do with bees and fighting crime and all this? So I took that idea and put this book together, and I mentioned him in it and as being my inspiration, but it's basically just saying, what if the shadow government of the New World Order decides to militarize beekeepers to, you remember the killer bees back when we were all younger? Well, this is on a scale where they can actually control these. They can be used for assassinations. They can be used to control things. And so in this book, the hero of the story is like a lab tech who gets injected with serum, and then he kind of does the thing where he transforms, and there's some more things. And by the end of this book one, you've got the main villain who's working for shadow government, and you've got a couple people and a character named Critter McCool. So he's in there, who's I'm not give all the details away, but he's a key character in the book. And they were trying to fight the bad guys and stop them from taking over and assassinating some political figures using bees.
Well, bees, that's a great device because people panic around bees and get really scared. So.
Right. And that's it. It's just kind of a fun little book. Again, it's a novella. It's 2-hour read maybe, and but it was based on the idea he pitched to me, and I said, sure, let's see what we can throw together with my sci-fi side of my brain. So
that's fun.
That's what that one's about. And if you get it, it's on Amazon. And most of these books are all out in ebook and paperback, and they're on Barnes & Noble or Amazon.
Yeah. For Father's Day, I got a Kindle. So I think I'm going to make a venture into Kindle, and maybe your books will be where I start.
Great. That would be great. I appreciate that. That'd be a good book. Of course, Civil War book would be a great book, too, for you to look at. So,
I just have no idea how to use a Kindle.
If you don't want to sleep at night, read that one right before you go to bed, right?
I probably will. It's kind of my cup of tea, so to speak. The next book we have here is The Dark Side of Heaven.
Yeah, we briefly spoke about this one when I was on in April, but it hadn't been released. And it's the one that has a bunch of passages from the Book of Enoch. We talked about that. And then and also another piece of this is just talking about several of the major civilizations that existed pre-flood, pre-Great Flood. And so the world that whatever you follow as your science or your religion, most people believe there was some kind of great flood in the world, 11,000 years or so ago. And at that time, everything that was there was wiped out. And a lot of people, and you were finding things like Göbekli Tepe and things like that, where there were major civilizations we didn't even know about that were buried under the mud. And so this kind of goes into that. And it talks a bit about when people say fallen angels, there's really three types of fallen angels through the different religious realms. And there's the ones of Enoch, and then there's the Bible, and then there's even some from some other religious books. And so it kind of breaks down what is a fallen angel, and it kind of goes into that piece. And then it talks about the history of the world before the flood, these great Atlantis-type places, Lemur, Mu, and all these other great continents that people believe existed that are no longer here.
Is this more of a nonfiction book? I mean,
it's actually written as a nonfiction because everything we're talking about, people believe really happened. So as long as you go into it with that aspect, if you believe the Book of Enoch, and if you believe that there was other great Atlantis and other great civilizations before the flood, then it's a nonfiction book. Yeah. If you think all that's malarkey, then it's a fiction book to you, right?
Now, is there, you have a resource, the Book of Enoch? Is that something people could get and look at?
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last time. But right now, if they go out and just type in Book of Enoch on a search engine in Google, there's all kinds of videos, all kinds of movies. There's the actual books, which I own. There's also the Apocrypha, which I have the 54-book version. And it's got 54 books that were considered religious books before the Bible was formalized. And when it was formalized, these 54 books didn't get into the Bible, but certain people in the globe today even still read some of these and believe these to be Holy Scripture.
Now, I just, since you mentioned the Book of Enoch on our last interview, every time the word comes up, I pay attention. No, I heard about this a little bit. So.
Yes, it's interesting reading. It's got, it's just some additional material that people at the time believed, and we're talking BCE and in more modern times, believed it to be real until 300 AD or so, when people decided, okay, it's not going to be in this final version of what we're going to believe in. So,
and the Dark Side of Heaven, it's not a slanted book trying to talk people into believing something, right?
No. It's actually, I have actually one of the people who reviewed it on Amazon stated right off the bat they're a Bible scholar. And they found it very interesting because they saw things in here they'd heard and didn't know about, and they're going to use as a reference material to further their education in their own Christian beliefs. Yeah. And that's good.
Yeah, that is fascinating. You're fascinating, Dale McCool. Everything you do.
Well, January was all sci-fi, and then in April we talked about ghost stories and dog care and children's bedtime stories. And this time we're talking about Civil War, and we're talking about these other topics. So, yeah.
We have one more book I wanted to bring up, Guardians of Wisdom.
Yeah, it was one we mentioned last time, but it hadn't been released. And this is really a supplemental guide to my Dark World series, my sci-fi series. And what this is can be a standalone book, but it takes the fictional characters called True Dreamers. And if you think of them kind of like a ninja warrior, this is kind of their handbook. So in here, I actually put real information to tell you how to use swords and how to use different styles of karate, how to do different things for self-defense, and that's all real. And then the beginning piece of how to become a True Dreamer, that's all fictional. Right. But the True Dreamers in my book series was a spinoff of the Freemasons, and I happen to be a Freemason, but so it kind of goes that route. And so if you read the beginning part, it's like, hey, this is kind of a parody of Freemasonry, and then it goes on into all these other things. But it's really just kind of a supplemental book. It can be read alone, or it can be read as part of the Dark World series. It gives you more detail and background of the characters.
Well, tell me, I asked you this before in the past, but just bring me up to date. If I went to the website sandal-writers.com, it's on our screen. What will we find there?
Yeah, when you first get on there, it's got about 4 main pages, and the first one, the homepage, you're going to see these books we talked about, and it actually starts with the newest book, which has Civil War at the top. Each one has a hot button. If they click it, it takes them straight to the Amazon page. They can order the book. It has a little bit about the book. You go down through that page, and then the has an author's page, covers myself, Stephen Meeks, who's the co-writer of The Future Conquest, Brandy, and Cassie, who wrote the Ghost Story. Tells you a little bit about each person, and it has some hot links to all my social media. And then there's a page with interviews. This is my 3rd interview with you, so I post those links so people that want to go back and watch the interviews have the opportunity to. And there's things like that. And then there's a 4th page which just has some journal information on upcoming books that are still coming out. I've got that series that's more of a murder mystery we talked about. It's going to be coming out for the first year. And I have one other book that's kind of on hold on the side. And I still got to get book 4 of The Dark World out. It went on hold for about a year, and I got to finish that thing.
Is this your whole existence right now? Do you have a day job?
I did until in January of this year. I actually retired from 50 years of working in a real job. Yeah. My 9 to 5 ended, and so the first of all my 10 books out, maybe the first 4 were written while I was still working 9 to 5.
Wow.
And since then, I've had a lot more time. That's why I've been able to generate like 6 books this year because this is my job now.
Very good. How exciting.
Yes, it is. Actually, it took me a little while. I kept carrying a cell phone, expecting an important call, and now I forget where I leave my cell phone,
For you.
Right.
So here's these 4 books that couple just came out. They've all been in the works for a while. The Modern Civil War Survival Guide, Bees of Deception, The Dark Side of Heaven, and finally the lasso, which is, Guardians of Wisdom. So they all go, they're tied to other books and other ideas, and it's just fascinating, Dale, just talking to you. I went to the website, and it took me way down a rabbit hole. You could be on your website for weeks because it's so fascinating.
A lot of stuff out there.
Yeah. Any last thoughts for our viewers, Dale?
No, just like I always say, if you are learning how to write or you're writing, as try to become an author, just stick with it. Use all the resources available. Don't get pulled into some, place where they're going to take a lot of your money and do nothing for you. Use the free help that's available. And write every day if you can.
That's a great advice, Dale. And by the way, Dale has done it. Look at the volume. He's voluminous in creating books and stuff, so he knows what he's talking about. So thank you, Dale, and I'll see you in a month or so.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate the invite.
All right. For our viewers, we'll be back with more authors right after this.